Hi, I'm Mitch Slater, Senior Financial Advisor with UBS Wealth Management and Chief Flick Officer for FinLit. And I'm joined today by Chelsea Crost.
Hi everybody, I'm very happy to be here. I'm Chelsea Crost. At 16 years old, I started my first radio show because I really thought millennials needed a platform to come together, voice their opinion, learn from their peers, and also learn from experts today. And I'm now 22 years old and host and producer of the Chelsea Crost television show, as well as the millennial spokesperson for You by Kotex, and very happy to be here.
Terrific. All right, so the 800-pound gorilla when it comes to millennials and money is debt, all right, and student debt. And now the government's talking about doubling the cost of student debt. How are kids handling that today?
You know, it's amazing because when you're graduating high school, it should be exciting that you have the opportunity to go to college if you do have the opportunity to go to college. However, there's a different mindset now. It's more of, can I afford it? And if I do go to college, will I be able to then live life while going to school, because will I even have money to eat as well as pay for school? So the average student graduates college today with over $20,000 worth of student loans. And what a lot of students don't know or don't take advantage of learning about is how they could avoid that student loan debt. So with my platform, the Chelsea Crost Show, both TV and radio, I've made it a mission to never say that I'm the expert, because I'm totally not the expert when it comes to student loans, but invite experts onto my platform like Susie Orman, like Go Girl Finance, because they have so many incredible tips regarding student loan debt, regarding finances period, that can really, really, really avoid that, deep pocket of debt before you get into college, after you get into college, and how to start living now so that you're set for the rest of your life regarding finances.
How can millennials improve financial literacy for the next generation?
It freaked me out when I read an article that said the millennial generation might be the first generation that doesn't exceed their parents' income, meaning that we won't ever make as much money as our parents. And I said to myself, oh wow, what a horrible what a horrible statistic. That's really not inspiring at all. However, I think it really depends on how the millennials choose to save their money and spend their money, because we could defeat that stereotype regarding the millennials right now. And I think the more we educate ourselves on how to save now, instead of saying, oh, I'm young, I don't have to worry about it for a few more years, then that's the way that we're going to avoid that statistic.
So Chelsea, who taught you about money?
How did I learn about money? Honestly, when I was in middle school and when I was in high school, every time I walked into the math classroom, I would cringe because numbers are not my thing. And I always knew that numbers weren't my thing, so I excelled in the English and the reading and any project that didn't have to do with math. So all of my money education really came from sitting down with my parents. And it was because I had to learn young. I had to learn young. At 16 years old, I was creating a productions company, an LLC, and I needed to educate myself on what that really meant. And I don't think a lot of us take the time to ask questions when we're that young, especially if we don't need to worry about it. And the reality is that we all need to worry about it, because it's very evident today that there is so much debt in the world, especially regarding the millennials. So whether you have the opportunity to sit down with your parents and ask them questions, sit down with your aunts and uncles, your grandparents, or seek out the great opportunities like Flynn TV, like Go Girl Finance, like the Susie Orman Show. There's so many great resources available to us today to learn more about finances. And That's what I do.
No, that's great. And that's, you talk about how your parents really helped you. That's really critical, because for many people, they don't get that education. And one of the things I've always talked about is how important it is for parents to actually pay their bills in front of their kids. And especially in 2008, when we're in the recession, one of the things I did as a parent of teens at the time was to just let them know what was going on, what had to be cut out.
Right.
Did your parents do anything like that? Did they kind of give you a sense of what some of the upcoming bills were that you're going to have to pay?
When I moved to New York at 17 years old, I first got an apartment, and also my parents took me into Chase Bank, and they said, we're going to do this together.
Great.
We're not just going to set up the bank account. We're not going to just give you the debit card. We're going to explain to you what it is to create your own bank account, understand the balancing. You don't really balance a checkbook today. Everything's electronic.
Right.
So I was actually having this conversation with my grandma over brunch yesterday, and she was like, it's very important as a woman to always know how to balance your checkbook. And I laughed out loud, because it was just so it was such a generational difference
Yes.
because, we could do it on our app,
Right.
on the phone, on the Chase app or whatever bank that you have. So, with the times, it's making it so much easier for us who aren't good at numbers to have help. And my parents always did the right thing with exposing it to me at a young age so that I always knew what needed to happen. But until I said to myself, okay, I want to take ownership of my own life, of the money that I'm making, that's when I literally said to myself, I need to understand what finances really means, because it's not something that you learn in school in a textbook.
Right, and that's a problem, that it's not taught in schools. How about in college? Were there any classes? Anything?
I mean, I went to school. I went to a public school in South Florida, and we learned. I had economics and I had government, but we never even learned how to write a check.
Yeah.
I mean, we never learned how to do the small things that people in their 20s don't know how to do, which is a little scary. So when I went into college and I was a communications major at a liberal arts school, no way we weren't talking finances. And even for my boyfriend, for instance, who's a marketing finance major, said that he didn't get the foundation of how to save or finance your money appropriately to live life. So I think it's definitely lacking in curriculum today.
You've obviously been successful. You started very young. You wrote a book. You have a successful TV show, radio show. You're working for a number of really exciting companies like Kotex and Intel, doing some really cool things. So you've had some experience with money, obviously. Now, what are some of your friends saying that are in their early 20s and suddenly maybe getting their first job? Are they
Right.
coming to you and saying, "My God, Chelsea, what do I do? I don't. What's a credit score?"
Right,
For
right.
example.
What's so interesting? I had a radio show 3 months ago, and Susie Orman was on the show. I adore her. I think she's hilarious, and when she talks about money at the same time, it's like a hard thing to be funny and talk about money and really learn something at the same time. So I had more people than ever calling after that Susie Orman show than I even did when I had a A-lister celebrity on the show.
Right.
And you know why? Because people really were startled by her information in the best way possible. She was talking about Roth RIAs and 401ks and how if you save X amount of money right away, that by the time you're whatever years old, you're a millionaire.
Right.
I mean, and it was very startling to hear the word millionaire at a pretty young age.
Yeah, at 25 years old, you put, I think it's $5,000 away until you're 65 years old.
And
At
you're a millionaire.
7%, you're a millionaire, which is not so easy. That's the one part Susie doesn't quite say. 7% is not that easy, especially in an environment where interest rates are zero. But that being said, it's a great idea because
Right.
you're starting to learn about compounding your money.
And at least it is like an indicator to say, ooh, I want to start saving, because it's a pretty big number at the end of the game. Like, at
Right.
least it gives you some initiative to say, that's why I should save. And so when all my friends are graduating right now, all of us are getting our first jobs right now. And honestly, the only person that I've heard to get a 401k plan is, ironically, my boyfriend. And because of my radio show and because of my television talk show where I had Go Girl Finance on the show and some other experts, he understood the importance of a 401k and actually went with that job instead of another job that didn't provide it.
Brilliant. That's so brilliant.
And it's so important for us to know how important benefits are.
Right.
And first job out of college, you can't be that picking and choosing right now, but if a job opportunity is providing benefits, I mean, that is, every time he talks about his job and he says my job also has full benefits, you should see people's faces. It's like, what?
Yeah, that's very rare. That's
Right.
certainly very rare. And
First
the
job out of
401k is,
school.
I mean, it's a layup. It's a no-brainer.
And it's something that not until recently, after educating myself and educating my peers and my listeners on finances, did I realize was so important. So I learn from my own show all the time.
So Chelsea, you're about to move to a new city. Obviously, a lot of financial things to take care of. Tell us about that.
Now, at almost 23 years old, moving across the country, I've taken on all of these responsibilities. Today, I was getting my credit checked to, get my first car in the past 5 years. My credit, had to get checked for the apartment because it's under my name, under my production company. So big time responsibilities at 22 years old, but it's such a learning lesson. Like, it's so great to learn young. Some people don't have a credit score at 22, which is understandable. You're just graduating. However, it's good to know what a credit score is and how to build good credit, because that's something else that you don't learn every day.
No, and the problem, unfortunately, is that they do have a credit score. It's a negative credit score because they've taken on so much debt on their credit cards in college. The average college student, I think, graduates with something like $7,000 to $10,000 of credit card debt and might have 3 to 4 credit cards, because a lot of people are on campus trying to get you to use their credit cards.
Right, if you fall for that loan shark.
Exactly. So we've talked about a lot of things here today, Chelsea. Give me 3 things that all millennials should know about money.
I think that the 3 things really blend. I think it's all about awareness and learning about what money is, how to spend your money, how to save your money. And I think it really it engulfs into one umbrella, and it's really educating yourself on what the right things to do are with your money. And when you do get your first paycheck, how much to put away versus how much to spend on your day-to-day living habits, whatever they may be, eating, cooking, cleaning, gas for your car, your rent check every month. So it's how much do we put away versus use for every day versus use for playtime. I don't think people know how to live with money properly. And I think educating yourself is the most important thing you can do right away, so that when you do get that first check, you know what to do and it's not overwhelming. And I think learning how to save and put away right away is only going to make your future more golden. And then I think talking to people, like listening to other people's mistakes and investments, and those things are so educating, in themselves. And I know that my dad always was very open about investing in certain things and making a great decision and making a bad decision, so that my brother and I could learn the difference. And I think that, if you start to educate yourself and learn how to save young, it's only going to be an easier future with money.
Without a doubt, and put those goals in writing. I think that's also critical. And the other thing too, I would add that I think you're aware of, is that you kind of have a freedom fund or an emergency fund, because you're moving out to California. Your husband, sorry, I'm going to rush that. Your boyfriend's got a great job. You're working on a number of different things, but things can turn like that. So sometimes it's a good idea to have 3 to 6 months of emergency money put away, so you can cover your rent, you cover your food, cover your car payment,
Absolutely.
cover your cable bill, whatever it is that you need, your phone bill, everything else. So
Absolutely.
That's all part of it.
An emergency fund, I was always taught that too, because God forbid that there's something that you even need a medical expense covered, because that's actually happened to me while here in New York. I had to go to the hospital overnight. Never in a million years thought that was going to happen, and the ambulance bill was almost over $1,000. So you never know what's going to happen. So to have that emergency fund is so important.
Any mistakes that you see in your generation that you're telling people to get educated, which is so critical? But any common mistakes, things you saw kids in college doing, or maybe some of your friends in their first job?
The one thing that frustrates me and saddens me is that I don't think that people are taking the initiative to educate themselves on the important things. If you ask anybody what Kim Kardashian's baby's name is, they know it.
Right.
But we may not know the difference between a checkings and a savings account. So I think it's more of take advantage of the ample resources that are out there via internet, and especially you can clearly see the reviews on things to know whether things are worth your time or not. It's important to learn things that are important, and I think that in a time where there's a lot of negative in the world, we try to dive into guilty pleasures like reality television. The Real Housewives of Orange County, I always say, is my guilty pleasure, because I need to not think. But sometimes we do need to think about the things that are really important instead of just the trash magazines, and educating ourselves on the important things like social issues, how to get involved, how to get involved with something bigger than yourself. And especially, nothing's more important than finances and savings, and because that's going to set your destiny for the rest of your life. So I don't know if it's a mistake, but I just urge people to educate themselves more on the more important things.
And I'm noticing this, at least with my son is 20, and with some of his friends, that they are more socially responsible than I've seen in some of the previous generations, certainly not in my generation. And I think that's great. I mean, Time Magazine calls your generation the me generation, not the we generation.
Right.
But clearly what you're doing and the missions that you've been on, and most recently in Kenya, are just showing that, you care on a bigger and more on a global scale.
Yeah, and that exact stereotype from the Time Magazine, because of course I got it right
Mm-hmm.
away and
Yeah.
read it like word for word.
Right.
I said, okay, I think that people fall into, different pockets within every generation. Every generation has the me people. Every generation has the we people. But I think what people tend to neglect regarding the millennial generation is that we are the most accepting generation ever. We are the most liberal generation ever. We are the most philanthropic generation ever. And I think the more that we highlight those people, the more the cultural shift will change. And that's the frustration that I have with the media and with the times today, is that we tend to harp on the negative when I think we should highlight the positive, because then people will look up to them instead of the not so great people.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I think, focusing on the positive, focusing on the things that need to be expressed and shared is how we're going to make this world a better place.
I just stumbled across this quote I have to share. Millennials are often portrayed as apathetic, disinterested, tuned out, and selfish. None of these adjectives describe the millennials I've been privileged to meet and work with, especially Chelsea Cross.
I really couldn't agree more, and that's why I'm so happy to keep the conversation going at chelseacross.com. You can find me at Twitter at Chelsea Cross, and thank you so much for having me.
Our pleasure.